The next step is a little tricky. We need to download an example file from the PRS website. The way you do that is you go to the Start menu and launch the PRS software. If it doesn't appear in this menu, you'll need to go to All Programs and then select Interwrite PRS from the list and launch the software. Once you get it open, you go to the Help menu and select Example Files, and it'll launch a website where you can download an example roster. You click on the link that says Example Roster, and one of the options will be to save that roster. So we're going to save that inside the folder where our other student data is. So make sure you've got that in the right folder. And then you'll want to leave it as example roster for the file name, and then do not change the file type. We want to leave that as a comma separated value. So just click Save. Next, we're going to want to open that example file. So you open up Microsoft Excel. Just go to Start and select Microsoft Excel, and then click the little Open button, or go to File, Open, and locate your example roster that you just downloaded from the website. I'm going to double click on that. And then I also want to make sure I have my data open. So again, if I don't have it open, I can click Open, and then in this case my data is called sample file. Yours might be called something else. And you open up the data file that has your student names in it with the tabs that say periods 2, 3, 4, etc. So we need those two files open. The example roster file, the one you downloaded, is going to look kind of strange. The first two rows are codes that the system needs in order to match the fields to import your data. So you don't want to touch anything in those first two rows. But this data, starting in row 3 and over and down, is all data that's just garbage. We can delete that. So we're going to highlight that data and hit Delete. And now we can put our own student data in there by copying and pasting. So in this case, I want to have a separate example roster file for each period that I teach. So I'm going to click over to my other spreadsheet that has my student data in it, and I'm going to highlight the last name and first name columns. Then I'm going to go to Edit and copy those, and then flip over to the example roster that has the two first rows of garbage, and go to Edit and Paste. And now I need to go back and get those student IDs. So I click back over to my sample file, or to my data file. I highlight the student IDs, and then I go back and paste those in. Now I have my period 2 saved. Now I just need to save it as the file name, so I know this is just my period 2 student. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and in the same folder where all my data is, I'm going to call this period 2.csv, and you can see it gives you the key down here. You want to leave this alone and make sure that you name it so you know which period of students you're working with, and then click Save. And now that file, and at this step you click Yes. Now that file is ready to go. Period 2 is done. So now I can delete these periods 2 students, and I can go back to my data file, click on period 3, and I do the same thing with my period 3 students. I'm going to highlight their names, copy them, and then I'm going to go back into my data file, paste the last name, first name, go back and get their student IDs, copy, paste the student ID, and be very careful to do File, Save As, call this period 3.csv, and click Save. So make sure I don't overwrite my other period 2. I do that for each of the periods that I teach, so I have a separate CSV file for each period of the day that I plan to import.